Hey, what's up, guys? It's me, Sly Elliott, and we're going to talk about more stuff happening on the internet and in video games and tech. And honestly, sometimes I don't care, right? I don't put out videos all the time because I don't care about everything that goes on in this industry. I'm not going to be one of those accounts that just talks about anything and everything for views and impressions and clicks. I don't care. So if I'm talking about it, it's because I think it's a little bit interesting, right? I just wanted to talk about Niantic, the developers of Pokemon Go. They're laying off 230 employees and shutting down their LA offices, which actually means that they're shutting down their Marvel and NBA games that they had going on, which shouldn't be a huge problem because Pokemon Go, fun game, don't get me wrong, but what Niantic did essentially was they created a game, they captured a little bit of lightning in the bottle, they did what all these companies do, and they essentially take that one good idea, that one game they made, and then they just reskin it and try to sell it as many times as humanly possible. I was just talking about Ubisoft in my previous videos where they're doing essentially the same thing. Niantic obviously did this as well. And in fact, Pokemon Go was created off of that template, created using the same tech and stuff from a previous game that they had made called Ingress. And Ingress, if you're looking, it looks pretty much like Pokemon Go, except more basic visuals. Obviously, they just threw on some Pokemon visuals to it, but Ingress was the precursor to Pokemon Go, and Pokemon Go operates off of all the same tech. It's the same stuff. It's landmarks pulled from Google Map data, blah, 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 blah. You go, you're connecting with all these other people, proximity, walk around, GPS, all that. They just took it, reskinned it, added some a few new features, and now it's Pokemon Go, which is the licensed franchise title, and then they found widespread success with that. Ingress was made all the way in 2013. So Niantic has kind of built their whole thing off of like, they had a good idea, they made a game. Don't get me wrong, like I said, it was groundbreaking, cutting edge for the time, 2013, like augmented reality stuff was really barely in the conversation, and they saw a huge opportunity there. What they did with Ingress caught the attention of, the Pokemon company, obviously. Remember in 2016 when they released Pokemon Go and, the launch was really bad and it didn't work at all. They didn't have a lot of the things that they promised would be in the game, but they launched it, had a lot of widespread popularity. The Pokemon Go craze that swept the nation, swept the world when Niantic first released this game. Everybody was playing it. It was a little annoying. Businesses started to do cringe stuff talking about it. That's when you know it's gone too far. When they start marketing to the kids and they go, "Come buy stuff at our coffee shop. Well, we like Pokemon Go too." Or you also know it's gone too far when people start trespassing, when people start breaking the law to play the game or whatever. That was a big deal. Actually, I just remembered around that time, I was working in Disney World. This is only maybe a year after the game came out, less than a year after the game came out. There was a problem at Disney where the guests, the customers at Disney would play Pokemon Go, and Disney, if you don't know, is a great place to play Pokemon Go, unironically, because almost every 2 steps you take is a Pokestop or a gym or whatever, because like everything in Disney is a landmark in every park. But the problem is the way Niantic made the game, it just pulls like Google map data mostly. Sometimes it would put Pokestops or gyms in places that they shouldn't be, like that made no sense or people shouldn't go or whatever. And it doesn't really have a ton of ways to know the difference. And so what would happen is we would have cordoned off like places of the park that the guests can't go. It's called backstage. We had a problem where a lot of guests that would play the game, they would sneak backstage to go to the Pokestops and the gyms, essentially trespass, go places they shouldn't go. It was a big problem, and security was always involved and having to escort people out and stuff like that. It was a really big problem. People were just wandering around like the backstage of Disney, which is a city in and of itself in most of the parks. Like the backstage area, it has all of its own infrastructure. I don't even know how much I should talk about this, but I don't care. I'm not going to work there again. But that's when you know that the game's gotten pretty big. The game's gotten pretty popular. Is when people are willing to get it put in handcuffs or fined to play your game. And it was cool because it got people out and about. I remember fond memories in COVID lockdown where the only thing I could do is get together with my friends and play Pokemon Go at local parks and stuff like that. Social distance, whatever. Whatever. That was fun because everything else was closed. And then they proceed to reskin that game, reskin that idea and that template, and create as many new video games as possible with different skins on them. This is a strategy that a lot of these companies will do. Ubisoft does it, Bethesda does it, Call of Duty does it. You say, well, if they're not fans of Pokemon, well, maybe then they're fans of the NBA. And so we'll make a Pokemon Go NBA game where we use all the same tech. It's all the same stuff. Now we capture the NBA crowd, that audience that's into that. Because if they're into NBA, maybe they're not into Pokemon. And if they're not into the NBA or Pokemon, maybe they're into Harry Potter. And they will like a Harry Potter game where they go around and cast spells. And if they're not into that, maybe they're into Monster Hunter. And that'll capture a whole different audience. Monster Hunter now. Monster Hunter right now. I want it now. That's what it's called. Comes out September 2023. And that's still happening. That's still in development. So to make room for more games that are exactly the same, they had to cut back and they had to cancel like their NBA game because if you're walking around outside already, you at that point can just go to a basketball court in real life and just play basketball. So I don't know like why you would need to be augmented reality playing basketball because you're already outside. So then you just walk to the basketball court. But then imagine, I don't know, but what if these aren't basketball courts? So it's making you walk to play like the post office to play basketball instead of the basketball court, right? Wouldn't that be weird? Does this look familiar? Does this look exactly like the character customization from Pokemon Go? That's because it is a different aesthetic, different colors, different icons. You're good to go. It's a different game now. All of a sudden, you can make even more money. Look, would you like to play Transformers, Pokemon Go, Ingress, NBA, Harry Potter, Monster Hunter? Now you can walk around and fight Decepticons outside. So Niantic, needless to say, maybe they got a little carried away. Because here's the thing. Once you start spreading your interest and your passion and your resources and your time and your manpower and staff, and you start spreading that out so thinly across all these games that frankly are the same in and of themselves, it don't require a lot of added creativity or thought. They're just licensed title after licensed title trying to essentially just impression farm and capture new versions of the same audience essentially, which are just gamers that would play augmented reality on their phone but like X franchise, and they just assumed that it was going to make them tons of money. They just assumed it was going to be as successful and crazy as Pokemon Go was every time. Here's the weird thing they didn't seem to consider. The reason Pokemon Go was really successful and it swept the world, this was something that everybody who ever has been a fan of Pokemon wanted to do since the show first aired and the first video game ever came out, which Pokemon's been around for a long time, which you can think like the first Pokemon game came out in 1996 and the show first aired in 1997. So that's a lot of people that could possibly have been exposed to Pokemon, seeing this concept, and the first thing you're going to think when you watch Pokemon or play it is, I wish I could do this in real life and there were Pokemon running around in my backyard that I could capture. That's the first thing everyone thought, right? That's the dream. So finally, we get a video game that actually allows us to do that, and of course, people are going to think that's awesome. That is not really the case with the NBA, because people can already do that. No one's watched basketball and then said, I would like to do this on my phone, but outside, because if they said that, they would just go out and play basketball. No one said that with Harry Potter, because like Harry Potter isn't about walking around outside and capturing little animals. It's like about one singular location usually in Hogwarts at a school where people like go around, do hijinks and cast spells and stuff. The only game it's a kind of like that is Monster Hunter. There's some overlap there for sure. Transformers, like, why? And then this other game they made, it's like a pet thing. They made their own, I think it's their own IP, their own creative intellectual property. Well, let's be honest, it looks a lot like Pokemon, and it's, like, it's like Neopets. Like, we get it, that's cool too. All right, whatever. I'm just saying that not all of these ideas and franchises are as obviously well translated to the augmented reality, go around to places, capture things, interact with things as Pokemon was, right? So it would stand to reason that not all these games would perform very well, which really seems to be the case, because on top of the fact that these are all uninspired cash grab reskins for the most part that we've already experienced ad nauseum with Pokemon Go, which is the best incarnation of this idea that you can implement probably out of any franchise you can possibly think of. The company itself, from a business standpoint, overextends themselves because in order to make all these games, they got to hire hundreds and hundreds of more people to make all these games. And then those projects don't do as well as Pokemon Go, obviously, so they can't afford to retain those people. And then they have to lay them all off, sell some of their offices that they opened up after Pokemon Go's widespread success, and they made all that money. They bloat, it creates a bubble, they balloon in size and scope, and then they have to retract once they realize that they cannot keep up the cash flow like they thought they would be able to be, because business brains, they just go, I had one good idea, let's just take this idea, reskin it a million times, and then we'll multiply our profits by if we make 10 games like this with 10 other franchises, we'll make 10 times the money. That's literally what they think. And it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. And so they don't make the money they're projected to make based on that logic. And then they have to lay people off. And that sucks, right? Not only does it suck because they're flooding the market with shitty games, but it also sucks that these people, like, they work on these projects that are like doomed from the start because they're being created and it's not coming from the right place in terms of the creativity, the passion, the drive, the motivation for it. And so it's not going to be as good, and it's not as good of an idea in the first place. So they're destined to fail. And you have these people wasting their time at these jobs making these games that no one's going to play, no one's going to like, and then they get laid off probably when they didn't expect it. I'm sure no one wants to get laid off. No one's like, I'm planning to get fired 2 months from now. I feel the most bad for these developers, right? Because the developers, it's not their fault. They're making the games that the company's telling them to make, that the suits are telling them to make, that it's going to make money. So they make Transformers and NBA and Hogwarts, and they try to make it as good as they can. They really do. Like, they really do try as much as they can with the idea and source material and the like limited business acumen that they're meant to work within. Fundamentally, the idea is bad, and it's a cash grab for bad motivations, and so the game fails, and then they get laid off when it's not their fault. It wasn't their decision to shamelessly cash grab at all these franchises, but they were able to do something they loved, which is make video games for a living, and that's great, and blah, blah, blah. They also probably assume, oh, well, Niantic, who's been in bed with Google for a while. Interestingly, Niantic Labs actually was created as a startup within Google, right? And then once Google restructured to Alphabet, they spun out into being more independent, who had a massive hit, global hit, like Pokemon Go, licensed franchise title. There's no way this could go badly, right? There's no way that these games aren't going to do well, because on paper, if people liked Pokemon Go, why wouldn't they like the NBA game? Why wouldn't they like the Transformers game if they like Transformers? It should all work the same way it did with Pokemon Go. That's not how it works. It's not how business works. That's not how creativity works. That's not how games work. That's not even how tech works. It just doesn't. They want it to so bad work that way, but it just doesn't. It doesn't always translate that way. Then they end up getting laid off, when for all intents and purposes on paper, Niantic looks like a solid gig. It looks like a real safe bet. They got $30 million in funding from Google, Nintendo, the Pokemon company, and everything when they went to like the money's been there. But when you look at the numbers, oh, look, in 2013, they made Ingress. And then that was like, oh, sleeper. Oh, there's a cult following. Okay. Years go by. All these years go by of development time, business, blah, 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 them figuring stuff out, improving stuff. Then they come out with Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go release is not finished, like not in a good state. It was not very stable or finished. Did not have nearly as many of the core features as it should have, right? Only like 2 years go by, tops, before they come out with their new updated version of Ingress, before they've even finished Pokemon Go fully and properly. And then the next year, they come out with Harry Potter Wizards Unite. And then 2 years later, they come out with Pikmin Bloom. And by the way, COVID happens right here. So like that impeded that progress, obviously. Then the next year, they come out with another. Then the next year, they're supposed to come out with 3 more. You can see it ballooning. You can see the creep of scope, the creep of, oh, if we make another exactly like that, we'll make even more money and more money. The exponential increase of releases as you go, like that's a red flag, dude. Yes, they hired more people to execute these things, obviously. You have to take more time and diligence and care to make actually good stuff than 1 year. I know you have the template. I know you figured it all out, blah, blah, blah. 1 year is not long enough, especially not to make 3 more games. How are you even doing this? So of course they have to lay people off. Of course they're not making enough money. Of course they were in over their heads, even with all this funding. The games industry does this all the time. The people who suffer the most are the consumers for wasting their time and money on bad product and getting disappointed. And then the developers and artists themselves working on it who get laid off, cast aside, fired, put into insane crunch times that they're away from their families, or blah, blah, blah. They're the ones who suffer, secondly. And then the people who laugh all the way to the bank are the executives, the suits, the investor, like all they don't care. These people any day of the week will do this a million times over, even if the end result is 230 people get laid off and offices get shuttered. They're not the ones who are going to foot the bill. They're not the ones who lose. That's the stuff that irritates me about this. As with everything, the little guy suffers the most, and it's the people at the top that are actually making these horrific decisions suffer no consequences. Maybe they have to sell one of their cars, one of their 20 cars. Maybe they have to downsize and get a smaller yacht. Maybe they can't send their kids to the most expensive private school. Maybe they can't have the cleaning people come every day of the week. Maybe it has to be every other day. Those are the sacrifices they have to end up making if something doesn't go well and they don't make bonus. It's bullshit. I hate it. And thanks so much for watching. Niantic, hey, my heart goes out to them. They're canceling the Marvel and NBA games. For some reason, they're keeping all these other games going. Okay, good luck. Pokemon Go will be the top priority. Okay, I believe you. Honestly, good luck to Niantic. You know, now that they have a smaller crew, that's going to make it harder for them to deliver on these projects. That's not going to help. So, you know, I'm not rooting against them. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see this mentality, this type of business practices. I would love to see them go away. I'd love to see them stop, but it's not going to anytime soon. Like, this is the way the games industry works. This is the way tech works. This is the way business works, and it sucks. I guess the call to action is when you see stuff like this, be nice to the developers and the artists, the people themselves, right? Because oftentimes it's not them who did it. It's not them who fucked up. So cut them a little bit of slack when you're ranting and raving online, when you're being a keyboard warrior on Twitter, giving your opinion. Just chill out a little bit on them. It's the company itself. It's the structure of the industry. It's the negative incentives of the industry and of the business and of the corporate world. These executives, they're not artists. They're not creatives. They're not developers. They've probably never written a line of code in their lives. It's these suits. It's these business people, these marketing people. Ugh. Those are the people that deserve to get a little criticism their way. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you like videos like this and you want to see more of them. Recently hit 1,000 subscribers. So grateful for that. Really awesome stuff. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Tune in for more streams when I stream. I just streamed X Defiant the other day. That was very fun. Want to do more of that? We will be soon. Thanks so much. Catch you on the next one.